With the undeniable rise of violence and assaults towards our healthcare staff and first responders, it's time to prevent, protect, and preserve those who take care of us. Make status sleeves the first choice in protecting our frontline workers.
Hello and welcome to the EMS Improv Podcast, where we engage, where we are mindful, and we tell or share our stories. I'm Eric Chase, and we are powered by the Journal of Emergency Medicine, aka JEMS. After a short hiatus, I have come back to the fold of podcasting with the EMS Improv Podcast, and I'm very excited for my first guest. Life has happened, and for each of you that you know, for listeners and followers, and listeners to this podcast with this next guest, you will understand how the things in life take us from active to less active to very engaged. And I walked away and saying I need a break, and that's where we find ourselves, refreshed, renewed, kind of reinvigorated, looking forward to the purpose of putting people in their stories and making them public. And in this case, this gentleman, and I'm bearing the lead for a second, he's already kind of been made public. And he'll smile when I introduce him. My guest is Jeffrey Hammerstein. He has 40 plus years of EMS experience with Wake County EMS since 1985. And if you want to be very specific, he was with Garner Volunteer Rescue Squad, Garner, North Carolina. And he retired as the assistant chief and many other hats, PIO, so on and so forth. He doesn't like hearing or talking about those things, so we're going to open him up because he still is a timid soul. And again, yet he's very adept at communicating with us and with me, and I'm excited for this recording. He's the author also, which is why I say he's already been made public. Hi, I'm a Paramedic, How a Timid Soul Found Purpose. It's a true life story. So Jeffrey Hammerstein, a lot of words said, a lot of things that you may be going, oh my Lord, here we are again. I don't necessarily want to talk about this, and yet you've opened yourself up to it. And I know for the EMS Improv Podcast listeners and followers, they're going to be excited to hear your story. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Eric. I just couldn't be happier to be here. And yeah, I guess I am timid. I don't even necessarily think of that of myself that way so much anymore, but I guess it's actually still pretty true. But I'm very happy to talk about it in all the different things that all of us go through together as responders and just in life in general. So happy to be here.
Well, thank you very much. We met through a mutual friend, Stephen Cohen, and I just want to tip the cap to Stephen, who's up there in the Northwest currently. I know missing North Carolina, but he and his wife are certainly doing big things out there right now. So they're loving that and enjoying that. I want to dig right in, if it's okay with you. You know, your book you wrote shortly after retiring, and I don't know if that was because you finally needed to find a purpose again. You were trying to put together this entire cumulative history of works and the job and the feelings and the emotions that correlate with that. But you titled it How a Timid Soul Found a Purpose. And you were boldly saying, hi, I'm a paramedic. Tell me about coming up with the title, and then what foundationally kind of put it all together for you to put it out there and bare your soul.
Sure. So the quick and simple, easy answer of why I did this is because my wife, Letitia, told me to.
Oh.
So I was nearing 2020. I had a retirement date set. And as you do when you're nearing retirement, you tend to get nostalgic and look back and think about where you've been, what you've accomplished, all the things you've been through, how different it is now than it was then. And writing on a return back to North Carolina from where I grew up in Indiana, but I was telling my wife about the first call I ever ran, and I was just fondly thinking about it. And I remembered it in such perfect detail from minute to minute to minute. And I described it to her. And she was listening, and then she just stopped. And she said, "You're going to write a book. You need to write a book. You're going to write a book." And I thought, well, okay, sure, fine. So I started out. I said, well, it felt a little pretentious to me to say I'm writing a book. And I decided, all right, I'll write that story of that first day, almost like a journal entry or something. And then I kind of worked through that and developed it. And then I thought, well, all right, I'll write what reasonably happened next, or what I would put next if I were writing a book. And that just kind of carried on and on and on. And then all of a sudden I was in fact writing a book where I had not set out, as I got towards retirement, to necessarily write about it. It's just kind of what happened. Um, Looking at the origin, more to your question about what prompted all this or what started about, with the title and all that. So just the term paramedic is something I always have been really, really proud of. And it just kind of found its way to the front of whatever this thing would be called. It's got that in it. And the hi, I'm a paramedic kind of ties to how we introduce ourselves to tens of thousands of strangers day in and day out. Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm a paramedic. I'm here to help, whatever the thing is exactly. So it's kind of that. The subtitle of How a Timid Soul Found Purpose ties to who I was as a kid. And so as a young child, I was just sheepish. I was afraid of everyone. I was afraid of people. I was afraid of dogs. I was afraid of snakes. I was afraid of blue jays. I was afraid of, given the time, I was afraid of nuclear war. I was afraid of all these things, and I frequently needed. It's not like I was a unhappy, walked around everywhere petrified all the time. It's just that I had a lot of fears, and I would worry a lot, and I needed people to reassure me. I needed my parents, my brothers and sisters, my teachers at school to reassure me it's okay. That lap dog, as annoying as it may be, yapping over there, is not going to harm you. That streak across the sky, moving from south over Evansville, Indiana to the north, is not a nuclear missile. It's a Delta 707 at 30,000 feet, and it's okay. You don't need to be afraid. So kind of having all those fears, needing that reassurance, and then tying that to this era that we were in, of this generation, where we were watching emergency, not in syndication, but lying on the floor, lying on the living room floor on Saturday nights, watching it as it aired. Each episode aired originally, and seeing Squad 51 come into these situations. And I don't want to be dismissive to all my firefighter friends. However, it was not the structure fires that drew me. It was not the high angle rescues. It was Johnny and Roy walking into somebody's living room, to their office, to their bedroom, carrying equipment. And there was a scared patient and worried family members. And they were counting on these two to do something to help them through whatever they were going through, to make things better, to reassure them. They open those boxes and get out IVs and attach the EKG. And then they get on that radio and talk to the ED and have that calm, collected conversation with the doctor, who give them orders to do the thing. And they would do that. And to the extent that it's a television show, so that's what they're going to show. They're successful over and over and over again in taking control of that scene and helping these people, helping guide these people through this crisis. And at the lower level of consciousness, as a child, as a 7 or 8-year-old, I could sense that they were doing that. I could see them doing it as paramedics. I needed that reassurance, and it developed into this thing where I want to grow up and be that reassurance for other people. And it's kind of just what I did from that young age, and never looked back the entire time.
So when I hear you say you wanted to be that reassurance, was it, and I'm going to harken back to my last podcast before kind of this hiatus with Bonnie Rumley, EMDR therapist and also a former EMS chief, that kind of put the EMS chief position, the relationship, and now being an EMDR therapist together. One of the things in her life, in the pathology of her life and experiences, was the adverse childhood experiences that created an opportunity for her to become a helper. And she didn't know that or see that or feel that. And I don't want to put that wholly onto you. And yet it kind of touches upon what you said about wanting to be very relational. Hi, I'm a paramedic. I'm proud of this. I want to introduce you. And then you said that you're looking for people to kind of comfort or take care of. Do you know the foundation of that and maybe the reasons, or if this was something just innately within you that said, I'm going to serve and I'm going to enjoy it?
Uh, that is hard to put a finger on. I, I don't know that I would have consciously, innately said, I'm going to serve. I think it was that drive of again, feeling so sheepish and shy and fearful of things. And I guess it almost kind of selfish, that kind of sounds selfish this way, but thinking if I could be the one who is making other people feel better, I would feel better about myself or more confident in myself. And there would be some kind of reward for being the one who was providing that service. So maybe that's what you mean by innately you're going to serve, and that's just how it's going to happen. But and again, these weren't conscious thoughts by any means at a young age. It was just driving me in that direction.
Oh, I think that's pretty cool. So just kind of how all your life's experiences and everything that you did don't have to, like you said, consciously create this thought or this action plan or plan of action. This is just what happened and who you became. So when you talk about the growth and getting into this position and all the different hats that you've worn, you've had several interactions as a paramedic or as a district chief or however, whatever your role and title was in the community with people. And in our pre-talks before we recorded, you've talked about several things that still make me feel or have a sense of wow, and really touched my core as far as an emotional instance where somebody saw you in a role and thanked you for what you did. And I'll let you tell the story, but it goes through a whole emotional chain of what happened to how they saw you, to how it made you feel. And ultimately, you tell me you found out when that call was and things like that. But there are things like that we as paramedics, as public safety professionals in your role that we deal with on a daily basis. And for you engaging, being mindful and telling your story, can you break that down for the listener and talk to them about what that meant to you, how it made you feel? Because I know that as we engage with other providers and other first responders and just the general public that's listening, you may give some insight as to how we feel, and that one of our colleagues, and even though you're in retirement, may not feel alone. So wherever they are on the spectrum of needing to hear this story, do you mind breaking that down a little bit and kind of going all in on that?
No, happy to. And if I've learned nothing else since this book was released in early August, the enormous amount of feedback has been about the parallels that we all have with each other, that you can change the details in these experiences, but this is us. This is what we all deal with and go through. So there was one night I was shopping in Target, and it's 3 miles from my house. And this was I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. So I was still, this was before I retired. But I was standing there looking at something. I was focused on something. There weren't many people in the store. And I could, how you can just feel somebody's looking at you. And so for down like 4 or 5 aisles down, there was a woman, probably in her mid-30s, that just kept looking at me as I looked at whatever I was looking at. And I would kind of glance over because I could feel it. And she'd look, and then she'd get a little closer and keep staring and keep staring. And it was kind of strange. Because I'm off duty. I'm in a t-shirt and shorts and tennis shoes, and in a completely off duty. I'm not a paramedic. I'm just a guy, frame of mind. And after a really strangely long time of her watching me and getting closer, she finally walked up. She said, "You don't remember me, but you responded to my house when my husband hung himself." And that put me in a little bit of a spin because it was so out of the blue, and I just didn't expect it. And she engaged, and of course, as she talked and described how she felt and what she went through that night, I'm sitting here scanning, when was this? Where was this? When did it happen? And in the back of my mind, I'm also thinking, yeah, I've been to hanging after hanging. I've been to all different types of suicides and all. And yes, we run all these calls and they run together. Uh, but I can't place this one. And I was a little bit preoccupied with that and frustrated with it and trying not to show that on my face, because as she talked, she seemed very comfortable, which she should have. I would want her to feel that way, and kind of talking through that and how helpful we were. I mean, it was too late, of course, but she felt the support, and she felt cared for, and it seemed very meaningful to her. And the more it felt meaningful to her, the more I struggled in my mind with, and I can't even come up with responding to this thing. I can't even place it. And so I didn't let on to that. I just engaged with her, and whatever the things we say are, I'm sorry, and I'm so glad we were able to be helpful in whatever way, however I put it. And she felt very satisfied with that, like she got a lot out of it, and turned around and walked off. And then I was just completely shaken by that, because the harder I thought, the harder I struggled to place the call. And I started to feel kind of angry at myself. Are you kidding me? She just went through all this and poured all of this out, all this detail, this horror she went through, and I can't even place being there. And I didn't have any doubt that I was the right one, because she said enough. She watched me so much, she was sure. No, we don't remember everybody we go to, but just about everybody we go to, they remember us, because that's a life-changing moment for them. It's a call to us in some ways, and it's a life-changing moment to them. I knew she was right. And I felt frustrated myself. I called what am I, some kind of soulless piece of shit here, that she's been through all this and I can't even place the call. And from a rational perspective, yeah, we run all these things. How are we supposed to remember all of this? But it felt like, and it was not even terribly far from where I live, that as I struggled to come up with it, I felt wrong. I felt like I was letting her down, like I was letting myself down, because she'd been through this and I can't place the call. My heart rate was high. I walked around and just kind of walked it off for a little bit, and kind of came back down to earth. And nobody in the store would have ever known what was going in my head. It was just working through this and thinking, wow, we see these things that have this huge impact on people. And are we really at a point where it's, yeah, well, that's what happens. And then we move on. And I was just kind of at a loss for that, and wasn't sure where to go. And so I talk about it. I mean, I think sharing some of those thoughts in the book and in platforms like this is useful to kind of get it out and talk about it and get it off your chest a little bit.
When we're working through things like that, when some people might say, oh, there was this cathartic moment that I had, and whether it's a moment or a continuum, in many cases, the trauma that we witness and or experience, it's that continuum of working and dealing with things as we go through them. So, you said it's a call to us, and you kind of felt like a piece of shit for not remembering that. That just spoke to me, and I want you to speak with your words and feelings to the listener, the person that needs to hear this right now. When we start getting to that point where it's just a call to us, and we honestly start telling ourselves that we are a piece of shit, and we're in it for the wrong reasons, we're not doing it for the right reasons, whatever the case, and however we phrase it about ourselves, what kind of darkness is that? Did you ever experience that? And what would your words of wisdom and hope and discernment be for that person?
I think the first thing I would say is a willingness to be vulnerable about things. The willingness to say, yeah, this scared me, or it upset me, or it bothered me. I think as I wrote that story, I was thinking, as you write or talking something like this, you're talking to this amorphous collection of people. Uh, it, and I kept picturing, these hardened, worn out paramedics are like, whatever, we run these calls all the time. You're being weak. You're letting yourself get caught up in something, yada, 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 yada. As though they've never been stressed out or caught up or moved emotionally by anything. We're just going to cover it up and act like you need to get over it. And that's the old way for sure.
Yes.
And so I picture that, and I think it's easy to get caught in a trap of we run so many calls that they just become a call. And maybe feeling that way is where we stop and think about things like what got us here in the first place. What does it really mean to be this person who's responding to people, and get to those basic, even if they feel cheesy later on, those basic things. We're here because somebody was in a crisis that they couldn't figure out how to navigate, and they called for help. And you have the honor and the privilege of being that person who was selected by whatever means to respond to that call and go help them. And I think in terms of things like we spend all this time in school and all this time in continuing education focused on these worst case scenarios and these drug medications and these elaborate procedures and these high-end, high-tech things that we do to intervene with a critical patient. And in reality, that's a tiny fraction of what we actually do. We got to be ready for that, but that's a tiny fraction of what we do. And I kind of come back to at retirement and later on in years, people say, what's your advice to somebody coming into the EMS field or whatever the emergency field it is, or whatever field in general it is that we can have a positive impact on the people, on just about every person that we respond to, if we choose to. And if we don't get some kind of fulfillment in something other than whether you sink a 14 gauge needle in somebody's chest for decompression or intubated like a superhero or some elaborate procedure, if you can't get some type of reward out of something besides just those things, you're going to have a really hard road. That we've got to be able to have human connection with the people we respond to. We can't let ourselves, for our own sake, get caught up in this idea of whether this person should have called 911 or not, whether this person deserves this paramedic ambulance response, whether they deserve me coming to take care of them or not, because I've got critical things to do. We've got to find some kind of reward beyond that. I don't know if that's a good answer for what you would tell the person struggling with what you originally asked, but that's just kind of where that thought leads me as we talk about it.
I think, well, firstly, it is the most important because that's where you were led. And I think all too often we as humans have stuffed where we're led. We stuff our feelings. You talked about vulnerability and you talked about, just putting yourself out there. And these patients' families, whomever are calling us, are putting themselves out there, whether we would call it vulnerable or not. They're requesting something. And the hubris at many times that I see colleagues in the past have about who we are, and what we do really has been infuriating. For me, the greatest call to action is now just that comfort care. And if I can do other procedures within that are required or necessary for the care of that patient, I start now going to the base level, the most human level interaction for fulfillment. And then if the call and the patient and the condition require other things to be done, then it's part of, I've already made a relationship with them, and it helps me get through it, particularly if the outcome is not positive. So I appreciate that. And you said, well, maybe that wasn't the answer you were looking for, which is where I just digressed from. I think the fact that you felt that way is the best, and you didn't stuff it, to kind of reiterate what I said before my little tangent. So I'm grateful for that part of the share. And I heard snippets where I think they're going to, cut them and put them out there is hey, listen to this whole podcast, but here's Jeffrey Hammerstein talking about something where he went through this, and this is a salient point. This is an action item that you can do as a paramedic whether you've got 15 years, 20 years, or 5 months. And if you have 5 months, my hope is that you do that daily, as Jeffrey and I learned over the course of time, and not necessarily how we performed at the beginning of our careers.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the whole value of learning from other people's experiences is that you can learn that early on. Because yes, school, training, continuing education is all focused on doing the things, assessments and doing things to intervene with whatever you found wrong in the assessment. And much less of it is about the person and how you stay healthy and well and fulfilled. And you know, it can be such a vicious circle where people are enraged because there's 5 cars in the parking lot and it's just a little bit of a fever and they shouldn't have called us out for this. And so people talk like they're going to scold these people and make them feel terrible for having called. Not only are they doing a disservice to them, they're also making it so much harder on themselves because they get upset by their own anger, and it turns into this vicious circle where they're even harder the next time. And I'm not trying to pretend I'm perfect. I'm not trying to say I wasn't frustrated and exhausted and tired at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, on my 15th call of the shift. But that's the takeaway. That's what I learned and definitely got better at later on.
Well, I appreciate the takeaway, and I remember myself being that angry paramedic, you know, working in large metro areas in Colorado and in Oklahoma. You know, just the amount of calls. Sometimes it was a 12-hour shift where you ran 17 or 18 calls and transported 14 of those patients. Other times it was a 24-hour shift or longer. And sleep and care and self-care are so important. When I hear crews saying that we didn't get enough rest, I always temper that with, I hear you, and were you taking appropriate downtime when you had it for yourself, or were you still just doing whatever? And you know, we see all these gut-wrenching, horrifying losses in EMS, whether it's a late night or an early morning. And we had here in Oklahoma a paramedic line of duty death within the last couple of weeks. And I know people are still mourning that. That kind of brings me to the point of, and you mentioned self-care and learning from those that have made the mistakes and grown through that. And I use the word grace and giving yourself grace and understanding hypocrisy is one thing. Staying in that state is detrimental to everyone around you, because it just creates that leap cycle, that guilt cycle, and that shame cycle that keeps us being that negative force within an organization that wants to be positive. That I kind of want to pivot, you know, because I know that we can go deeper into this, and simultaneously, I know you held a position, and I've held a position of public information officer. And when we in these positions feel, or the patient and the community, the citizens, depending on how aligned they are to political and governmental organizations, a lot of times that bad news, that bad paramedic interaction, that bad EMS interaction gets out there to the public, to the news, to the local leaders. As PIO, you did something that I'm sure obviously addressed those types of actions when one of the Wake EMS crews had an incident that maybe wasn't as positive as it could have been. Where do you see us needing to go from today moving forward with all the history cumulative of what we've done, the good, the bad, the ugly, and what we desire to do as we grow into this next opportunity post-COVID, especially, as presenting ourselves, putting our best foot forward, the type of EMS that's most appropriate from a standpoint of funding and recruitment and retention, all those types of things. I'm throwing quite a few things out there, but as PIO, and addressing an issue where you were that employee at one point that was angry and negative, and it spilled over and it caused feelings for a patient's family. If you had to address that as PIO, and it was made to the point of a bigger thing than potentially it was. How would you deal with that?
So that's a complex question, and I think it starts with the program that you build actively engaging and initiating contact with media, traditional and social, and building relationships with media. It can't begin the day something bad happened, or it's just going to be a bad thing. We leave so much on the table, and I'm speaking about emergency services just as a very cumulatively here. We leave so much on the table for not actively engaging and initiating contact with media. And I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out why, and I have some ideas why. But the more we engage, the more we go out, the more we respond to their requests for interviews, the more we say, hey, come talk to us about this thing. We're going to do a news conference on this new procedure, and create that relationship and brand ourselves. I don't particularly like to use the term brand with this, because we're not trying to sell a product, but we are trying to sell ourselves as something that belongs to the people. The more they know about us, I think our staff deserve that. Our staff deserve for the people we serve to know who we are and know what our capabilities are. That it's not just, oh, well, it took you more than 9 minutes to get here, so you're a bad EMS system. And it's not just, oh, we're going to throw you in the back of an ambulance and race you to the hospital to get medical care. We're bringing high-level emergency medical care right to you where you are when that's what you need. And the more we talk about it, the more we engage, the more we create an identity for ourselves, the more the people in the community know who their EMS service is, the better set up we are to have a good relationship with them. And then that's where, when something doesn't go right, we've got, and I hate to use this term, but I'm going to use it. We've got a little capital. We've got some trust in us to say, yep, this thing happened. And we approach the bad thing to start with by being transparent. Yes, a thing that we don't support, that we don't believe in, it's not who we are, happened. And here's what we're doing about it. One tiny example, we lost a laptop once. It was early in the era of laptops, and it got lost. It had information on it. We lost it. And they came to do news stories, and I sit right there and say, yes, we lost a laptop, and we're sorry about that. That shouldn't have happened. Here are the steps we're taking, number one, to make sure it doesn't happen again. And number two, here are the steps we're taking to protect the people that may have had some vulnerability, and on and on and on. And one thing that I learned from a PIO in school is that people will forgive mistakes, but they don't forgive dishonesty. And I took that to heart. And if you're willing to stand there and say, yep, this is what happened, then people are even sympathetic to that sometimes. We had developed enough of a relationship with local media by then that this reporter got there, and he said, Jeff, I'm sorry, I have to ask you about this stuff. And I said, Steve, that's your job. You should be holding us accountable. Yes. That is what your role is. Yeah. So ask it, and I will answer for it. And then we'll move on from there. But that relationship is important.
So you said several key buzzwords to me, and I call them buzzwords because with the affective skills and dealing with people and those social skills, how to actually interact, it's not taught in school. And all too often these paramedic programs or EMS programs, notwithstanding good, cogent, solid, didactic information, how I deal with, and now we're saying that these employees, once they become an employee, are to figure that out through the field training process. They're already technically not relational because they've learned just to be rigid and rote memorization, and they understand that this, and you as the employer now, the organization has to then show them how to do these things. Mm-hmm. And when an organization isn't relational to start with, and you're just a pulse with a patch, mm-hmm. and then, as Kelly Grayson would say, where we eat our own, and we just, chew them up, spit them out, chew them up, spit them out, chew them up, spit them out. Organizations that don't have robust public information, that don't have robust accountability operations, whereas something happens, and you mentioned the trust and integrity. Oh, well, I heard integrity. You mentioned the trust portion, where if something happens and you say it, there's going to be a lot less consequence than not saying it at all. And it harkens to me to a vehicle getting a dent, or medication getting drawn up and pushed inappropriately, where there was no deleterious effects, but yet it was still a medication error, a dosing error, whatever the case may be. And when these come out, addressing them the way we need to address them, when people hunker down, is it a level of toxicity that EMS has, or is that an organization thing, or is that a human thing where we feel that no matter how many times we're told, if you let us know immediately when something happens, there won't be gross punitive action. It will be used as a learning tool. It'll be used through like M&M review, whatever the case may be, to improve the system as well as your performance. Is that, I guess the last question is, we kind of start wrapping up. Is it an EMS toxicity? Is it an organizational toxicity? Is it a human mindset to seek the negativity over the positive? Where do you find it is on the spectrum when things like that happen, and we still see day to day individuals not fessing up to something that they would literally have even had a verbal reprimand, or at worst case a 90-day paper in your a handwritten reprimand?
To me, that's easy and simple. It is a human thing. It's a human thing. It's just got EMS clothes on. In other cases, it's got fire clothes on. In other cases, it's got teachers' clothes on, or a factory worker's clothes on. That's just human nature. It's definitely, it's very easy to say, well, the administration needs to make sure they act this way, and that's entirely true. But it's a two-way street. The people who are doing the thing need to make sure they're acting a certain way, and it starts with, well, actually, I don't know where it starts with, because it's a chicken or an egg thing. There's got to be relationship and trust built, so that if I dented the ambulance, or if I gave the wrong medication, even though I only knew it because I have an empty vial of the wrong thing, that I can come say, look, I just did this thing. This is what happened. I didn't mean to do it. And it's got to be from an administrative or a medical directorship perspective. It's got to be, I hear you. I'm glad you told us. Let's figure out why that happened that way. Number one, so you don't do it again. But number two, as you were alluding to, so we can share that, and other people are less apt to do that. It's everybody's responsibility. We're all teachers. We're all learners, and we have to get it there. We have to get there together in that mindset, regardless of what department or profession or discipline it is.
I love hearing that, and I'm grateful for that perspective, because that's the first time I've heard it ever said like that. So I really appreciate it. It's a human mindset in EMS clothing, or in fire clothing, or in teachers clothing, or construction clothing. I love that. That was just, I hope they cut that out as a snippet and put that out there to kind of present this. That's another one of those things that as we engage with people, we learn so much. And when I'm dealing with my manager as a supervisor myself, and I receive something from that person that I don't really enjoy how it was said, I know how to then receive it, digest it, bring it in, and then respond appropriately, where I'm not creating a more adverse circumstance. And maybe that person doesn't even know that I had a feeling about what they had said. And, dumbing myself down, or going to the root of the thing, and just, say, hey, this is an every one of us situation. Let's create an environment that we say, you know what, I accept that this happened. I don't have to agree with it. And then where do we go from there is what I hear you saying. And it looks like that's, what you've done throughout your career, where you've matriculated and you've grown, and you've taken some of these cumulative adverse events and you've turned them into a cathartic, a learning, a growing, a whether it be spiritual, emotional combination, or it's just you as a human being going, I took it in, I have to take it out.
Right.
And you know, the ebb and flow of life and the good, the bad, and the otherwise that happens. Jeffrey Hammerstein, you have been a beautiful soul and an amazing guest in the time that we've shared. And I know that we've gone several different places with the listener. You said, and was it just this August that your book came out?
Yes, August 1st,
Okay,
actually.
so where can people find, Hi, I'm a paramedic, How a Timid Soul Found Purpose?
You can find it, of course, on Amazon, where that's where a lot of people find a lot of things. But it's on Amazon. It's also on Barnes and Noble online, and it's out there. And the biggest thing that I can say, or I think the most important thing that I would want to say about this book is something I said earlier, which is this is us. This is not written as a book about Jeffrey Hammerstein. This is written about a book. It's a book written about a scared kid who was determined to be a paramedic, and that's what he did. And you will see yourself in this book in 100 ways, I think. And it's to us, for us, about us.
All right, well, to us, for us, and about us. I couldn't have said it more eloquently. I just wanted to reinforce it by repeating it. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeffrey Hammerstein has been my guest, a North Carolina, currently living in. We lived both in Garner. Didn't know that until Stephen Cohen introduced us. I just say that to people that are listening also. The people that are around you, talk to them, listen, hear them. I learned so much from Jeffrey just in the first interaction, and we didn't talk about anything other than just who we were, where we kind of grew up and how we came up. And that took us to another level. The conversation that we had right now is organic. It wasn't planned. We didn't have massive talking points. And we don't have to do that in life. You can just start with, hi, I'm a paramedic. Hi, I'm Jeffrey. Hi, I'm Eric. Hi, I'm whomever. And that, to my cores, is how I think we're going to grow in a society that's hurting, in a society that needs comfort. And because we have the vocation, the profession, the industrial components, whatever vernacular we use for paramedicine, ladies and gentlemen, listeners, followers, do it every day, and it's not going to be weird. Don't just do it when you put the EMS uniform on. You're hurting yourself in the long run, and you're going to be gaining so much more by getting a relationship with people. And it can be relational in 30 minutes and then be done as well. And I understand why people would say that's a transactional relationship. You can go real deep and real thoughtful and real caring in that time frame with a patient, a patient's family, or even a coworker. Jeffrey, I want to give you the last couple words before I do my outro. Wherever it is, wherever it comes from the depths of your spirit, from an experience, or wherever, I give it to you before I take us out.
Sure. So one of the thoughts, quickly, that I worked through in my career and wrote about in the book is seeing all the things that we see, not just the tragedy and the violence and the bad things that happen to people, but just the unbelievably difficult conditions that so many members of our community live in, and thinking about the notion, well, this is the real world. That's what people say. You're in the real world. And then I've started to wonder, well, if this is the real world, then what is it when I go home and I'm privileged enough to have a loving, strong support network and a house that is intact and has heat in the winter and cool air in the summer and plenty of food to eat? What is that? And what I've really learned is that also is the real world. There are different real worlds, and we toggle between them when we go to work and come back. But we've got to be able to see and appreciate everyone from all of those different dimensions and understand their value. Because again, as you've alluded to, we make ourselves happier that way and more fulfilled. So that would be my parting thought.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey Hammerstein, for being a guest. This is and has been the EMS Improv Podcast, where we've engaged. We've tried to be mindful, and we definitely have shared and told some stories. I'm Eric Chase. We are powered by JEMS. And until our next podcast, I want to say thank you and may a peace which surpasses all understanding be with each of you.
With the undeniable rise of violence and assaults towards our healthcare staff and first responders, it's time to prevent, protect, and preserve those who take care of us. Make status leaves the first choice in protecting our frontline workers.